Honeywood School. She was born in Burlington, Iowa. Well, no, actually Keokuk, Iowa, and raised in Burlington, Iowa. She founded her own school in Burlington, Iowa, an industrial school that taught students skills that they could use to have lives and careers. Her school was so successful that it ended up integrating into the Burlington school system. In 1912, she had the opportunity to speak at the First Baptist Church of Iowa City, Iowa. And while there, she met Lawrence C. Jones, and he said he knew when he saw her, when he heard her speak, that she was probably the smartest woman of his race he had ever seen. So in August 1912, she marries Lawrence Clifton Jones, and she moves to the state of Mississippi. And Mississippi in 1912 was we talk about the challenges of 2020. They did not compare to the challenges of 1912 Mississippi. When she arrived in Mississippi in 1912, there were no such things as training schools for African-American children. African-American children, particularly boys, were sent directly to Parchment for minor offenses, while white boys had the opportunity to attend Columbia Training School in Columbia, Mississippi. There were no schools for African-American blind children or African-American children with physical disabilities. These were all things that she saw were wrong with the state of Mississippi, and she didn't just lament about them. She got busy working to improve these conditions. For one thing, she made sure that the Pontiac School was open to any and all students, regardless of physical disability or any other challenges, financial or otherwise. But she didn't limit it to what Pontewoods could do. She actually lobbied the state of Mississippi. She's listed in the Mississippi House Journal as having spoken to the Mississippi House of Representatives in the late 1990s, like around 1919, 1920. So can you imagine going up to Jackson and in our current Capitol building and speaking and talking about the need for education, the need for health care. She hosted in Mount Bayou, Mississippi, and at the Pontiac School, some of the earliest health care conferences. For example, she had people such as Henry Boswell and Felix Underwood, who are mainly known for being names on the side of buildings now, but who were leaders in public health in Mississippi in the early 20th century. She had them talking about what needed to happen to reduce the incidence of tuberculosis in the African-American community, what to do about nutritional diseases such as pellagra in the African-American community. And she put women to work addressing these issues. And so she's an inspiration that if things can be done, you have to get out there and do them and make sure that they happen. She took an organization she served as president of, the Mississippi Federation of Colored Women's Clubs, from about 14 active chapters when she became president of the organization to 75 by the time she left office in 1924. She helped to start the first blind school for African-American children in Mississippi and all of these things. But she did more than that. She empowered young women to know that there was a better world out there than what they had access to then, that they could have better lives, not only just for themselves, but for their families and for their children.
Wow. Monica?
That's great, Angela. And listening to your question, Willie, it makes me think of, yes, how did women get through all of this that they did? These women that are leading the companies, the challenges that they've had. And I say that they did it fearlessly and with determination and courage. And I have one example of a woman that's over a Fortune 500 company. Her name is Lisa Sue. She is a woman of color, And she is over now AMD. She's been there for the past 5 years. Now, when she took the helm of AMD, which is a microprocessor company, it was on the brink of bankruptcy. You know, the stock was $2 a share. And what this woman did with, again, I'm sure going against a lot as a woman over a company like this, she went to the core competencies and she has built that company back up. I actually invest in this company, but she has built it up to where it is today and is leading it with a vision that most men would love to have. You know, and I know a lot of men do, but I think in anything that women, when we have those challenges, we have courage. To me, women sometimes even have that "I'll show you" attitude.
Yeah.
You know, we've been excluded from a lot, you know, whether it's sometimes education, you know, we have to lean in that we've been told because we have setbacks sometimes. But I think when we get that courage and that determination, we're ready to say, I can do it. And I'm going to show you I can do it. And I think that's how women have led a lot of the challenges that we have faced. We just put our boots back on. It's like, oh, well, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
We got to do it. Right?
And I think from the examples that Angela shared with us is, as she stated, is they saw a wrong that they wanted to make right. And also, I think the other piece of it that's unique to women when we talk about the strength of women is that we not only empower ourselves to get the work done, but we also show other women how to do it. And it's important for us to empower other women because to be alone in empowerment is not very empowering. You know, you got to bring other women along, you know, with you. Would you all both agree with that?
Yes, and really a perfect example of that, when the National Association of Colored Women was founded in 1896, they adopted as their motto, lifting as we climb, because they recognized they had a dual burden of being Black and being women. And that no matter how good life was for them, because they were mostly, by today's standards, middle class women, they recognized that it didn't matter how well their lives were, so long as there were other people whose lives weren't doing well. That all women, all African-American women would be judged, as Jesus would say, by the least of these. So it was about uplifting the entire community of women and children and families. And for Monica and I, in our own family, we have a personal example. Our grandmother, Mrs. Mabel Thompson, our mother's mother, who our mom got a lot of her, you get out there and you do it from, literally and figuratively. Well, her youngest son was born with a severe case of cerebral palsy. And at that time, when he was born in the 1940s, there was no services for children with his kind of disability in Mississippi. So her older brother, Willie, said, well, just bring him to Memphis because you can get treatment for him in Memphis. So she brought him to Memphis. But then she stopped and she said, wait a minute, I pay taxes in Mississippi. Why am I, going all the way to Memphis to do this? And I still have 2 children at home because at that time, my mother and uncle were still at home as well. So she went to the state and said, I have a son with cerebral palsy and he needs what they called at that time crippled children's services. And they said, well, we don't know how many African-American children need that. Now, they provided these services for white kids. So she went around and she found at least 10 other children who needed the exact same services her son needed and was able to force the state of Mississippi to provide services for her son. And that, and that's another reason why it can't be just about an individual. It has to be about uplifting a group and a community of people.
Now, you both have come from legacy. On, as I stated, Miss Dorothy Stewart Samuel, and this is a good time. I want to back up a little bit, because I think for me, when I think about Women's History Month, I think about how what I personally want to look at is those women who have inspired us in the past to be who we are in the future. So the question I would like to you and both you and Monica to share with us is, tell us a little bit about your youth. When you were growing up as a young girl, who were the women who inspired you? Of course, in addition to your great mom, but also who were other women that inspire you to be who you are now? Who transformed your way of thinking to be the women that you are right now?
Angela, before I answer that question, I want you to repeat that one more time, that phrase, that theme you had. Lifting, was it lifting while pulling others up?
Lifting as we climb.
Lifting as we climb. I think that needs to be repeated.
You know, the full phrase they use is lifting as we climb to be women sublime. And that is the motto for the National Association of Colored Women. And the Mississippi Federation of Colored Women is an affiliate of the National Association of Colored Women.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And if you want to answer that question first, go ahead.
You know, I had a fourth grade teacher.
I knew it.
We moved to California in the fall. Well, I'm not going to say what year, but anyway, we moved to California for a year. My dad had a Yale Urban Fellowship, and we lived in Daly City, California for a part of that time. And my teacher was Mrs. Barbara Davies. I was the only African-American female in that class. There were Asian Americans, there were, white Americans, there were Latinos in that class. I was the only African-American, and she was an African-American woman. She even gave me a free Angela pen, because at that time, Angela Davis was in jail. But she was always, inspiring me to say, you are just as talented as any of these other children in this class, and you can do it. And she was an activist and a leader in the teachers union out in California. I even found a photograph that was done of her highlighting a strike that had been in the Bay Area during the 1970s. So Barbara Davies was definitely one of my inspirations. I work at the Margaret Walker Center, and through my mom, I got to know Margaret Walker Alexander, as people called her locally. And she was another great inspiration for me. My church member growing up, Mrs. Lottie Thornton, she was a great inspiration for me. Her generosity, her wisdom, her wit, all of those inspired me. And then at Ferris Street growing up, we had people like Miss Essie Randall and Rosie Holden, who had been activists in the civil rights movement. My mother was friends with Miss Clary Collins Harvey, and I got to know her, and she was another great inspiration as well.
Wow.
And for me, it was some church ladies as well, just admiring their duties around the church. I've always wanted to be a mom, so I was always looking at the ladies and how they handled their children. And to be honest, as an adult, and I know this sounds like someone that everyone else likes, but I remember when Michelle Obama came onto the scene, we were around the same age. She had two daughters that were the ages of my oldest son and my twins. I loved how she did things differently. Even the small things where she walked out sleeveless, she had these arms. So whenever she was on a magazine cover, when she was in office, I remember being in Minnesota, and I would just admire how bold she was. I'm not really that bold person, but so I admire women that will you can tell that she kind of says what she wants to say, but she's held back because of her position. So even more so now, I love how she has that podcast. I listen to it. And I just love her spirit is so down to earth. Mm-hmm. She's down to earth, and she's a sister that has it together. So anyone that's always, to me, had it together, that's kind of how I want it to be. I really am kind of like, I do things however I want to do them. So even as raising my kids, and especially raising a boy, I picked up on things that I have just grown up on. And I never wanted my son to be a man that a woman had to do everything for. So I grew up seeing this with women that had to do everything for men, and men that expected it. So with my son, I can even remember with young mothers that I hung around with, and how different I raised my son and how they catered to their sons. And I'm proud to say to this day, if David ever gets married, who knows if he ever will, but if he ever does, he will not expect any woman to cook for him. He will probably be cooking for them because he cooks better than I do. He does his own laundry, self-sufficient. And I want him to be the man of a household, but also not be a burden to a woman, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I've always had my own way of doing things, but I have admired women that had those families, and at least on the outside, everything seemed together. And that's how it's seen with Michelle and women from the church as you admire them through the years.
And Monica, you specifically, I have also admired how you are raising your young girls. If you can, without their permission, share some of the conversations that you have with your girls, and your girls are having with you. Who are some of the women that you think are really piquing their interest these days and helping also to inspire them and motivate them?
Oh, that's a good question. And, we had a conversation early this morning before they went to school on peer pressure. Now, peer pressure is a subject that, of course, we've talked about for years, right? But sometimes when you see something, I was looking at a show on Netflix, and a great example of how this young girl, she was in high school, was with some friends, and the friends stole something, and her friends happened to be Caucasian, and she was a mixed race girl, and they encouraged her to steal it. And I can just say she was Black. She's mixed race, but other people still see her as Black. She was the only one that was called out for stealing. And she was wondering if she was racially profiled. And I love the show because it just brought up a lot of things. It brought up the race. It brought up how the friends weren't really her friends, right? They quickly threw her under the bus when it came to the stealing, because they got outside and say, we didn't know she was going to steal, even though they encouraged her to do it. And I think the reaction of the girl by saying, I just wanted them to like me. And I think with a lot of women, especially young women, we do look for that. We want someone to like us. We want to be, what's the word I'm looking for? We want to be part of that group.
Yeah,
accepted. We want to, yes. And we had that conversation because my girls are pretty quiet, but what I love about them, they are very headstrong, and they do not succumb to peer pressure so far. They pick good friends. And right now, I just try to keep it real because of things that I believe women should share. So if there are women out there that have gone through things, I think you should share it with your kids. Share the things, the struggles that you had, because they will have struggles as well. But if there are some that they can think about a little more, maybe they won't have as many struggles. Part of it is life. I mean, I wrote some things down, what I would tell a young girl today, a teenager that is going through what they could possibly be going through in 2021. And one I want to share, and that is find your inner warrior. And I know it sounds like something in yoga, but really it says you will go through a lot that will test your patience. It will test your strength and make you give up hope. And that's okay. That's part of life. Just don't give in to that weakness, but take care of yourself and you'll find out how strong you are. So I say that to my girls, and just don't give in. Just keep going to show people how strong you are.
And I think you're speaking to also what I hear from a lot of women is, and this is, it's amazing that throughout my conversations with women that we feel the same thing about this particular area, which is fear. And I think it, I've always said, even in my own life, and I said to my young 14-year-old grandson one day, he had done a presentation and he did such a great job. And when he got home, I was able to have a conversation with him about it, told him how great he did. And it was almost perfect. But he said to me, he said, "You think it was perfect?" He said, "Because I was scared to death." And he said, "I had so much going on in my stomach." and he didn't think he had done well. And I said to him, that feeling that you have in your stomach, which is fear, and that feeling, that tenseness and anxiousness, you may never it may never leave you. But don't let it keep you from being great. Don't let it be for you being challenged. And I think we as women, a lot of times we think, well, I want to wait to do things because I want to learn something. I want to take a course to make me more confident, and I want to read some more, and I want to find out more information about this before I jump out and do this. But all of it, I find that it comes down to fear. We want to be perfect. We want to be accepted. We want to do things. We don't want people to criticize us. But I think with we as women, for us, especially those women who want to move themselves to another level, it's that idea of how do I handle fear? How do I deal with fear? Because you can't get rid of it. It says, how do we become better at it? And I always say these days, especially since the many challenges that I've had personally in business and personal life, etc., is to embrace it. And I think when I say embrace it, it's you look at fear differently. Instead of this thing out there that you feel like is all consuming or is out there to grab you, if you embrace it, then it becomes, it's not such as this big monster, that you have to overcome. And I think when I hear you talk about finding your inner warrior, I think that's what you speak to, is that, you find that inner warrior that you can get over those obstacles and do it well. Would you say, Angela?
Yes, I say right on. I love that phrase, Monica, inner warrior, finding your inner warrior. I think that is an excellent way to phrase that, because you do have to find that within you. And, and it's something you even learn in church, that, you're going to have struggles and things, but God's grace is sufficient. And which means that when you know you have that, you should be able to push ahead and do things. But yeah, Monica, I might steal that. Find your inner warrior. I love that.
That sounds definitely like something we need to put on a T-shirt and wear every day. Yeah. But also, when we talk about this,
Monica, that sounds like a hashtag.
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah. And that's a great point for me to bring up this topic. It's you all's niece and the granddaughter of our founder, Miss Dorothy Stewart Samuel. She provided a poem to us, and it's called Womanhood. And I won't try to recite the whole poem. I almost now have it in my head, but there's the parts that stood out for me in that poem that I share over and over again over the years. Is she says womanhood is a force, and like all forces, it should have no boundaries. And I tell you, that poem speaks to who we are as women. So when you all hear that, What do you all think of that she was trying to say in those particular words? And Angela, this might be a good time. I see you putting up a presentation.
Yeah, there it is. That's
okay,
the quote.
Great. Let me read it too, Angela. Then I'm gonna let you jump in with your presentation. Womanhood is something that doesn't seem to have a real description. Once you try to define it, you limit what it can be, and it should be a force. And all real forces of nature move without boundaries. Womanhood is like nature. It encompasses everything, it touches everyone, and it is a symbol of life. And that was written by Miss Megan Dorothy Stewart.
Yes. Yeah. That's our niece, Megan. Yeah.
And Angela, I'm going to give you a chance. You have some more things to share us in this presentation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. I work at the Margaret Walker Center. And it just so happens that Dr. Miriam Graham is putting together a full-length biography of Margaret Walker. And she had a series of images that she wanted to use. And it just so happens that this image was one of those images. And as you can see, there's my mom standing there looking very proudly. And reverently as Mrs. Donna Dye attaches a corsage to Margaret Walker, and the man looking down on both Margaret Walker and Donna Dye is her late husband and the former lieutenant governor of Mississippi, Brad Dye. And this was at the Mississippi Governor's Mansion. This was one of those receptions that Women for Progress became well known for, where Margaret Walker was honored at the Mississippi Governor's Mansion. And I look at that and it just warms my heart to see my mom there. And, you know, we've already talked about these women, Melody Hobson, Stacey Abrams, and Kamala Harris, some outstanding women of 2020, 2021.
And Angela, before you move to your next slide, go back to that slide again. Go back to that. Yeah, I want to highlight one thing. I'm so glad you put these three women up. And in my introduction, I highlighted those too. I think what's the commonality between these women too is how they use their talent and their time to empower their communities. Even with Melody Hobson, which I didn't state before, she is also helping our African-American community learn about investing and making sure that we understand our dollars and how that our dollars impact our communities, and also building wealth. And of course, Stacey Abrams, who are empowering women, empowering voters, and changing the landscape of states like Georgia. And also she has created this foundation where she's funding and providing money into other states with help voters to empower themselves. And of course, Kamala Harris, who is just doing amazing things. So I just wanted to highlight that commonalities that these three women have in common.
Yes. And I mentioned Mrs. Grace Jones, and this is an image of her during her time in the leadership at the Mississippi Federation of Colored Women. I also mentioned Mrs. Clary Collins Harvey, who was born in Meridian, and her family moved to Jackson because her parents took over what was originally known as Fraser and Collins Funeral Home, and her family would actually buy it out and it would become Collins Funeral Home. And she was the longtime director of Collins Funeral Home, as well as a founder of Women Power Unlimited, which was an organization designed to move women more directly, especially middle-class women, more directly into the civil rights movement. She was a leader in Church Women United, helping integrate that organization as well. And she was just a leader in the Jackson Fair Street District and in Mississippi in general. So that's Clary Collins Harvey up top. And then on the lower picture three dynamic women of the civil rights movement: Mrs. Annie Robinson Devine of Canton, Mississippi, Mrs. Fannie Lou Townsend Hamer of Ruleville, Mississippi, and Mrs. Victoria Gray Adams. These women were leaders in the Mississippi and organizers of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. They worked with SNCC during Freedom Summer and in voter registration drives throughout the state of Mississippi. Mrs. Victoria Gray Adams, and she's the one with the sunshades on, would be the first African-American woman to run for the United States Senate out of Mississippi. She was a native of Hattiesburg, and she had an office in Hattiesburg seeking election to the United States Senate. All three of these women that you see, they're standing in front of actually the United States Capitol. They would become among the first African-American women to be seated on the floor of the United States House of Representatives. And they're going to lobby for voting rights, in particular the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So those are three very dynamic women there. And this is something that Margaret Walker actually said, and it forms the title of one of her books. She said, her place, let us be reminded, is anywhere she chooses to be, doing what she has to do, creating, healing, and always being herself, female, Black, and free. This is what I've always wanted, always want to be. And I just think that's such a remarkable quote about womanhood as well. And then this is an interesting graphic. It talks about the 50 richest women in 2021. And one of the women it highlights is Mackenzie Scott, who, through her divorce from Jeff Bezos, became the third richest woman in the world and has donated a portion of that wealth to Tougaloo College and Alcorn State University right here in Mississippi.
Wow. That was a great presentation, Angela, as always. And I want to just give a little bit of spotlight, too, to the Margaret Walker Center, because I think a lot of people, when they hear that name that's on the center, they think of just the work of Margaret Walker. But the center does so much, much more. Angela, can you share with us the work that you all are doing there at Jackson State?
Yes, matter of fact, just this morning, I was on a call planning a virtual genealogy workshop that the Margaret Walker Center will be hosting in April of this year. We are partnering with the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which is part of the Smithsonian Institution, and their Family History Center, the Smith Center, which is located inside the museum, to offer resources and information about family history research and genealogy. That's one of the things we're doing. We also will be hosting in April, the first week of April, but April 9th and 10th, our Creative Arts Scholarly Engagement Festival, what we call our CASE Festival. And it is geared toward high school and college students, giving them the opportunity to participate in presenting papers, displaying art, doing spoken word, poetry presentations, music. So it allows them to do both creative and scholarly engagement. We offer 3 awards as part of that. We have the Margaret Walker Prize, which is a $1,000 prize to the JSU student with the best essay on the African American experience in the South. And it's $1,000 directly to the student. It's not a book stipend. It's not a scholarship. It does not go through financial aid or the business office at Jackson State. We literally cut a check for $1,000 to the student who wins that prize. We're also Dr. Doris Derby, who worked actually for the Margaret Walker Center when it was the Institute for the Study of the History, Life, and Culture of Black People, and is a world-renowned photographer. She is presenting a $500 prize to the student who has the best visual art presentation. And John Jennings, who is an artist, an activist, and writer in Afrofuturism, is also presenting a prize. So we have about $2,000 worth of prizes that we will be distributing during the Case Festival this year. It is virtual. And the call for papers is actually, the deadline will be this coming Friday. So students have this week to get their papers in for the prize if they have to be judged. Because what we do is we only give the prize if we find a paper that's worthy of the prize. We don't just give the award to just give the award. The papers are adjudicated thoroughly, which is why we have a deadline for that, so that they can be ready for the presentation at the festival. We will also, as part of that, on April 9th, Richard Wright initially wrote The Man Who Lived Underground as a novella, but he had a lot of material, enough material to make it actually a book. But his publisher, during his lifetime, declined to publish the entire work. So an expanded version of The Man Who Lived Underground is being released in the first week of April by his publisher. And we are hosting on April 9th, as part of the Case Festival, a virtual discussion featuring Kiese Lehman, who is a native of Jackson. You may know his mother, Mary Coleman, who was longtime Associate Dean of Liberal Arts at Jackson State. He's an author of a prize-winning memoir entitled Heavy. He will be speaking Jesmyn Ward, who's an award-winning writer from the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. She's also, Kiese Lehman, Jerry Ward, C. Lee McInnes, and the daughter of Richard Wright, Julia Wright. They're the ones who will be presenting and talking about, and Kevin Powell, noted author Kevin Powell, will be talking and reacting to The Man Who Lived Underground, which, as a short story novella, is an excellent piece. And so it's exciting to see the expanded version of that work come out. So that's part of that we have going on. We are also hosting an exhibit called Evicted. And Evicted will look at the impact of COVID, of race, of economics on eviction in the United States. So from about June of this year to October of this year, we will be hosting that exhibit in Johnson Hall Art Gallery, and we will be having numerous events in connection with that event. On May 15th, we will celebrate or commemorate the 51st anniversary of the shooting at Jackson State that killed James Green and Philip Gibbs. So that will be happening. It will also be, I would call it a hybrid event. It'll be limited in person, but also available online event commemorating the 51st anniversary of the murders of James Green and Philip Gibbs, as well as it's going to be an opportunity last year for the 50th reunion year, the class of 1970, were supposed to receive their golden diplomas, and they didn't get those because of COVID in 2020. So they will be honored, as well as James Green and Phillips Gibbs will be getting honorary doctorates from Jackson State during this time period as well. So those are some of the things we have a lot going on.
And amazing things that are going on that you can't find anywhere else, and that's what I want to share with people. But tell people, how can they get connected so they can get a notice or that of these activities as they come up?
Yeah, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're available on all social media, so please follow us on social media. We're also available on Jackson State's website. Our website is jsums.edu/Margaret Walker Center. And I always say it's just easier to go to the JSU website and go to the web directory and look up Margaret Walker Center, because it's a lot to remember in terms of the actual web address.
Yeah, and I've been keeping my eye on a lot of the great podcasts that you all are doing, and just so many different things. So culturally, historically, and around arts and culture for young people also. And I say not only we as women need to, anybody who's listening, male or female, need to get connected to this particular resource at Margaret Walker Center, but also connect your young people to it, your young women, your young men, your young boys and young girls to this, because they're constantly on social media. And sometimes we want to point them to directions beyond YouTube that they can...
And two things I want to quickly mention, too, that are kind of affiliated with the Margaret Walker Center. We are in collaboration with the Scott Ford Houses. And the Scott Ford Houses have received a $50,000 grant from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation to do additional oral histories into midwives, granny midwives. And we're primarily looking for people who were either birthed by a midwife, who had family members who were midwives, or who may have been midwives themselves. And we're doing oral histories that, in the culmination of these oral histories, will be an exhibit that will be on display at Smith Robertson Museum initially. But the ultimate goal is to restore the houses on East Cohee Street that belong to Mary Green Scott and Virginia Scott Ford, and to turn those into house museums, and they'll be part of the exhibit there. So we are doing oral histories. Dr. Janice Neal Vincent, who is a retired Jackson State educator, as well as a reporter for the Mississippi Link newspaper, and she will have an article actually coming out tomorrow on the Scott Ford Oral History Initiative. And also, and Monica and I participated last week on a Zoom presentation that Dr. Heather Wilcox-Denay and JSU Office of Community Engagement sponsored on the Mount Olive Cemetery, which is located in between the Kofo Center and the College of Business on Lynch Street. And it was just a fascinating presentation that provides a wealth of information about the community of people, not only who were buried there, but just about the community in general. So that's something else we work with as well.
Okay, well, wonderful. And I'm going to have one question to wrap up. I know we're coming down. We got about 5 more minutes, but I cannot leave without reminding everyone that Women for Progress, in partnership with Jackson Advocate, Jackson Free Press, the League of Women Voters, the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable, the Jackson, Mississippi chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, the Central Mississippi chapter, the Mississippi NAACP and One Voice, and the Beta Delta Omega chapter of AKA sorority. All of these women and women-led organizations are coming together for the 2021 City of Jackson mayoral debate. And it's going to be, I guess we can say a hybrid, but for the public, it's a virtual debate. It'll be broadcast live on the Women for Progress Facebook page. It will also be live because a lot of people say, I don't do Facebook. Well, you can go to our website, our radio website at womenforprogressradio.com, womenforprogressradio.com, and it's going to be live right there on that first page. You put in that in your browser, and boom, on the first page, when we go live, it will be there, so you can get it there also. Of course, it's available on all of our podcast networks, Spreaker Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and it's SoundCloud, several different podcasts, so you can get it on your phone. Or if you missed the live broadcast, you can always go back to those particular, wherever you get your podcasts, and listen to it also. And of course, it'll always be available there on the Women for Progress page. But we want you to come together with us for this Thursday, March 4th at 7 p.m. In March 4th at 7 p.m. Many of us, especially of us women, we've gotten home, got little Johnny's homework together, and hopefully we'll be able to relax and enjoy the conversation. But it's going to be really an inspiring event. We're so glad and appreciative of all of our partners that have come together in this particular effort. And I got to give a hats off to our coordinators for this event, who are members of Women for Progress, Attorney Monique Montgomery and Attorney Crystal Welch. They have just been phenomenal in leading this effort and leading all the footwork that's been required. And all the members of Women for Progress and our partner organizations that have come together to advertise and pull together the video clips and do all those things. We thank you so very, very, very much. Our goal in this particular debate is to bring together these candidates to be able to share information, to be able to dig deep within the questions so that we can make good decisions on April 6th when we go to the polls. So we want you to join us live on March 4th at 7 p.m. on the Women for Progress Facebook page. And like I said, you can go to the website at womenforprogressradio.com and you can have it there. But in order for this to be successful, we want voters all over the city of Jackson to get this information. We want you to share that with your family, your friends, and your neighbors, to make sure that they sit down in front of their social media platforms to be able to listen to this on your laptop, on your iPad, or either on your phone, and be able to listen with us together. And so I want you to make sure you join us for that. And also there'll be information. You can also put information in the chat, give your comments. If you got some questions that you want us to follow up with you on, we want you to come in that and share with that also. And we'll be having a follow-up survey after the debate also that we want you to participate in. So that's March 4th. That's this Thursday at 7 p.m. We want you to join the candidates, join Women for Progress in partnership with all of these organizations. I want to give that list one more time: Jackson Advocate, Jackson Free Press, League of Women Voters, the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable, the Jackson, Mississippi chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, the Central Mississippi chapter, the Mississippi NAACP and One Voice, and the Beta Delta Omega chapter of AKA sorority. We thank so much for our partners for engaging in this work with us, and we want you to stay tuned. I want you to give you our contact for our organization: mail@womenforprogress.net, mail@womenforprogress.net. You can reach us by phone at 601-259-6770. If you want to partner with us, you want to engage with us, you want to share information with us, you want us to reach out and share resources with you, because we have a wealth of resources. And I always tell folks, Women for Progress doesn't have the answer to everything, but we don't have the answer. But I can pretty sure tell you we can connect you with somebody who does. So make sure you reach out to us, and we help to will help you get connected. And we also want to keep South Jackson and all the city of Jackson in our prayers around this water issue. It looks like things are coming live. I live in South Jackson, so I feel your challenges. And I'm so glad to say that I have water in my home right now. I have a little hot water too this morning. We were able to take some good showers last night. So I just want everybody to stay strong and stay helpful. I know it's challenges for us as women to get up every day, try to get little Johnny and little Jane ready and get to work and do the things that we do. But let's just keep supporting each other. Let's stay strong. But we have to keep it on. We can't give up. We have to keep moving forward because there's an answer to everything. There's a solution to everything. And but we have to do it, and we have to do it together. Miss Angela Stewart, Miss Monica Stewart Wilson, you ladies are always amazing as usual. And I know we're right at the 1 o'clock hour, but I'm going to just give you all I want to close by saying, what is it about, what do you think the real legacy of Miss Dorothy Stewart Samuel in this organization will be and continues to be as we move forward past this pandemic?
I'll start.
Okay.
Being a generous leader. So one thing that Dorothy Stewart always was generous. And that went from getting to know people and connecting with people to always being, what can I do for you? She definitely instilled that in us and taking care of our relatives. But we saw it all the time, whether it's a person at the hospital or just someone that she meets in the store. So as a generous leader, I think with Women for Progress, we can continue that by making sure that, as we mentioned earlier, I'm telling you, I'm going to love this, lifting as we climb.
Yeah.
And just sharing our gifts, our talents. I know, Willie, as you as the president of Women for Progress, you're always saying, hey, this is a service organization. You all have got to work. And, just making sure that people realize that, hey, this was founded on someone that was a generous leader, and we want to continue that.
Great. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and building on what Monica said, part of that generosity and the outgrowth of that generosity was empowerment and empowering others. And one of her heroes was Nanny Helen Burroughs, who used her righteous discontent to empower a generation of Black Baptist women. And that was Mama's inspiration in terms of Women for Progress, letting women know that you can do it. You don't have to stand on ritual or custom, but that you can go out and you can do it. And you can be empowered to do it. And that was part of her gift as well in terms of generosity, empowering others to be able to find their voice and their activism and what they could do.
Well, thank you all so much. And I think one thing that I love about this organization and the women that are in it is dependable. Today, I chose you two to launch the Women's History Month, and you all did not fail. This has been a powerhouse conversation.
Thank you, Lily.
Yes, thank you all so much. I am so inspired about you all every day. And I want to just say shout out to all women out there as we walk through this month that they call Women's History Month, but we know women history continue to be made every day. That you're sharing your stories with each other, you're sharing your not only your triumphs with each other, but your challenges with each other. I think that's how we grow. That's how we know that we're not alone in this situation. So thank you all so much for supporting the Working Woman Report, which is every Wednesday right here at 12
Thank
to
you,
1.
Willie.
And make sure you mark your calendars and everything, because we're going to have a lot of great conversations each Wednesday this month as we move forward. So good day to each of you, and thank you so much for tuning in today.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.